Have you ever promised yourself you would change, only to find yourself doing the same old things tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that? You dream of success, of a better life, but every single morning you choose comfort over action. If that sounds familiar, then this story is for you. Once upon a time, in a peaceful village surrounded by green hills, flowing rivers, and fields of golden wheat, there lived a young blacksmith named Ethan. Ethan was strong, clever, and incredibly skilled with the hammer and anvil. The villagers admired his talent and often said he could become the finest blacksmith in the entire land. But Ethan had a problem. He was lazy. Every morning, Ethan woke up slowly. He would sip his tea, watch the clouds drift across the sky, and tell himself, "I'll start my work tomorrow, or maybe next week." And so, day after day, his dreams stayed exactly that, dreams. Ethan's workshop was full of iron, heavy hammers, and half-finished tools. There were plows waiting for farmers, swords for the guards, and repairs needed for the villagers. All of it just waiting, but Ethan delayed. "I'll work when I feel ready," he'd say. Some days he sat by the river, just imagining the applause and respect he'd receive. He pictured himself as a great blacksmith, admired by everyone. But every evening he returned home empty-handed. "Tomorrow," he'd whisper to himself. "For sure." One morning, Ethan's best friend Daniel, a hard-working farmer, came to visit him. "Ethan," Daniel said kindly, "you are so talented. Why do you always wait? If you finished your work, you could help everyone and yourself." Ethan just shrugged. "I'll do it when I feel like it." Daniel shook his head, a look of disappointment on his face. "You are wasting your gift. One day you will regret this. Dreams mean nothing without action." Ethan smiled on the outside, but inside, a feeling of guilt started to burn. Weeks passed. The farmers started to complain. The guards grew impatient. Even the village children began to whisper among themselves, "Why doesn't Ethan finish anything?" One day, the village chief himself arrived at the workshop. "Ethan," he said firmly, his voice leaving no room for argument, "your laziness is hurting the village. If you do not change, you will lose your place here." That night, Ethan sat alone in his workshop, staring at a half-forged sword. "I want to be great," he whispered to the empty room, "but I can't even force myself to work." He felt trapped by his own habits, a prisoner in his own mind. The very next morning, a stranger arrived in the village. He was an old blacksmith named Samuel, known across the land for his wisdom and skill. He walked into Ethan's workshop and looked around. "I see your talent," Samuel said gently, his voice calm and knowing, "but talent alone means nothing." Ethan looked up, a spark of hope in his eyes. "What is the secret?" he asked eagerly. Samuel smiled. "Discipline. You must work even when you don't feel like it. Discipline is like iron. You have to hammer it every day, even when your hands ache and your body wants to rest." Then he added, "Start small. Just 5 minutes. Then 10. Then more. Motivation comes and goes, but action always moves you forward." Ethan decided to try. That first day his arms felt heavy. His hands hurt. Every part of him screamed to stop, but he worked for 5 minutes. Then he pushed himself for 10, then 30. By sunset, he had finished a small plow. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was a start. The next day was even harder. He wanted that familiar comfort, the rest, the clouds. But he told himself, "Today I will show up no matter how I feel." He picked up his hammer and got to work. Slowly, things started to change. A farmer smiled when he received his new plow. A sword for a guard shone brighter than ever before. The children stopped whispering and started cheering when they saw him working. Days turned into weeks. Each morning was a struggle against his old self, but each evening brought a small victory, a sense of progress. Momentum began to build, like a snowball rolling down a hill. Months later, Ethan's workshop was a completely different place. It was filled with finished tools, shining swords, and strong plows. People began to come from faraway villages just to see his incredible work. His talent, once dormant, had finally met discipline. One evening, Samuel returned. He walked into the bustling workshop and saw the new man Ethan had become. "Do you see the difference?" he asked. Ethan smiled, a genuine, proud smile. It was hard. Some days I really wanted to quit, but I forced myself. And now I feel proud. I feel strong. I feel alive, Samuel nodded. That is the power of discipline. Motivation fades, feelings change, but consistent action builds greatness. The lesson from Ethan's story is simple, yet profound. You are not weak. You are not broken. You just need to take one small step and then another, every single day. Action builds momentum. Discipline builds character. And character builds a life worth living. From that day on, Ethan became a symbol in his village, not just of skill, but of courage. The courage to fight your own laziness, the courage to change. And his story is still told today, reminding us all that the road to greatness is never easy, but it is always possible. If this story inspired you, make sure to subscribe to Life Stories in English for more motivational life stories that can change how you think, how you act, and how you live. Your future self will thank you.